Have you ever been involved in an accident and wondered how much your injuries are actually worth in a lawsuit? What about all those bills and the pains you have suffered? How do you get compensation for those? Today, we are going to break down how personal injury damage are calculated in New York. So, if you have been hurt and you are thinking about filing a claim, this is the video you cannot afford to miss. In this video, we will cover 6 topics. First is the type of personal injury damage you can claim in New York. Second is how economic damage like medical bills and lost wage are calculated. And third is non-economic damage like pain and suffering and emotional distress. And fourth is how New York's comparative negligence rule impact your compensations. And fifth is the method for calculating pain and suffering damage. And sixth is what evidence you need to support your claims. By the ends, you have a clear understanding of how to calculate your personal injury damage and what to expect in this process. So that first is types of personal injury damage in New York. When it comes to calculating personal injury damage, New York law recognizes two main types. First is economic damage. These are the measurables financial losses you have suffered due to your injuries. They include things like medical expenses, lost wages, and property damage. And second is non-economic damage. These are more subjective and cover things like pain and suffering, emotional distress, and loss of enjoyment of life. Well, harder to quantify, they can often result in significant compensations. And second, how economic damage are calculated. Let's first talk about economic damage. These are the easier ones to calculate since they involve tangible expenses. First is medical expensiveness. You can record the cost of medical treatments, including doctor visits, surgeries, therapy, medication, and hospital stay. Keep track of all your receipts and invoices to show these expensive. And second is lost wages. If your injury caused you to miss work, you can claim compensation for lost wage. This includes salary, hourly wage, and even further future lost earning if the injury will affect your ability to work long term. And third is property damage. If your property, like a car, was damaged during the accident, the cost of repair or replacement will be considered part of your damage. To calculate economic damage, simply add up all the receipts, bill, and documentation related to these expensive. And third is how non-economic damage are calculated. Now, let's move on to non-economic damage. These can be much harder to quantify, but they play an important role in your case. Common non-economic damage include it. First is pain and suffering. These reflect to the physical and emotional pain caused by your injuries. There is none receipt for pain and suffering, but it can be sustainable. The more severe and long lasting the pain, the higher your compensation could be. And second is emotional distress. This include anxiety, depression, and PTSD that result from the injuries. Your medical records and testimony from mental health professional can support this claim. And third is loss of enjoyment of life. If your injuries prevent you from participating in hobbies or activities you once enjoyed, this can be factored into your non economic damage. One of the most common method for calculating non economic damage is the multiplier method. This involves multiplying your economic damage by a number usually between 1.5 and 5 that reflect the severity of your injuries. For example, if your economic damage total is $20,000 and you have significant pain and suffering, a multiplier of 3 could result in $60,000 in non economic damage. The role of New York's comparative negligence law. In New York, the law follows a comparative negligence rule. This means if you were partially at fault for the accident, your compensation could be reduced by your percentage of fault. For instance, if you are found to be 20% at fault for an accident and your total damages are 1 lakh dollars, you would only be able to recover 80% or $18,000. It is important to keep in mind that even if you share some blame for the accident, you can still recover damage as long as you were less than 50% at fault. And fifth is the method for calculating pain and suffering. As I mentioned earlier, pain and suffering is calculated using the multiplier or per dime method. Let's break this down. First is multiplier method. This is the most common method. Your total economic damage, like medical bills, lost wage, etc., are multiplied by a number based on the severity of your injury. A more severe injury could result in a higher multiplier, increasing your compensation for pain and suffering. And second is per dime method. This method assign a daily value to your pain and suffering. For example, if your pain is considered moderate, your lawyer might assign a daily value of $150. If your suffering lasts for 90 days, your pain and suffering damage could total $13,500. And what evidence do you need to support your claim? To support your personal injury claim, you need a strong evidence. Here are some essential documents and proof you should gather. First is medical records. These are crucial, providing the extent of your injuries, the treatment you have received, and the impact on your daily life. Witness and statements. If there were witness to the accident, their testimony can be visual. And third is expert testimony. Doctor, therapist, and even vocational expert can help demonstrate the long-term impact of your injuries. Fourth is photographic and videos. Picture of your injuries, the accident scene, and any property damage can help reinforce your case. The more evidence you have, the stronger your claim for damage will be. Now, you can how personal injury damage are calculated in New York, and you have the tools to begin building your case. Whether you are dealing with medical expenses, pain and suffering, or emotional distress, it is important to understand your legal rights. If you have been injured in an accident, consult with an experienced personal injury lawyer who can guide you through the process and help maximize your compensation. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more legal tips. And if you have any question, drop them in the comment below. I am here to help.